Chapter 18. Claiming the Eagle. We encountered little resistance as we moved east through the lands of the Marsi. They had been the first to suffer Roman reprisal and had lost much in the struggle. It was a clear sign of their subjugation that their own king, Malovendus, led us through their lands. For the legions it was more a lap of honour than any real kind of action. The fact that Caesar and his men had survived Poseidon's wrath was enough to sour the prospect of fighting in all but the most rebellious hearts. In a matter of days, Germanicus had ensured that the tribesmen were under no illusions about what raiding across the Rhine would mean. We had only one goal left for that season. Malovendus had confessed he knew the location of one of our captured eagles, and we were not going home without it. "There can't be more than 70 warriors there," Aulus whispered to Marcus as they stared down at the grove where the guards had been stationed. Marcus studied the unwitting guards below us. "They'll fight fierce enough, I'm sure, but their numbers are not the issue. That eagle is as sacred to them in some ways as it is to us. If those men could hold us even for a little while, one of them might be able to take the eagle and disappear into the forest." "And it's up to us to get close enough to stop that without being noticed, I suppose," Aulus said. The cavalryman would clearly have preferred a glorious charge to more crawling about. "Those are our orders." Marcus slipped back on his belly, then came up in a crouch. "So we get the dangerous job even in a battle we can't lose?" Aulus complained as he joined Marcus. "I know you wouldn't have it any other way," Marcus grinned. Aulus rolled his eyes and pointedly scraped off some of the mud. "Cheer up," Marcus said. "It'll look good in the reports. If all goes well, it will be us that brings back the eagle." "A blessed thing to be sure," Aulus said. "It's just a shame I'll be picking half this forest out of my armor before this is done." "Think of the Germans," Marcus said. "Most of them are doing this in nothing but skins." He knelt and retrieved a handful of mud, then smeared it over his face and began to creep forward. "To their credit, they do appreciate good camouflage," he added as he slipped back into the thick undergrowth. "I'll wager no one makes them clean their kit or asks them to stand on parade either," Aulus muttered and edged forward after my master and me. Others followed, but we were not many. Marcus had deliberately only taken a small squad in close. The rest waited in the woods in the hope that they might catch any fugitives if the eagle did slip through our fingers. "According to Malovendus, they've buried it somewhere around the shrine," Marcus whispered to the men next to him. "We'll have to see where they start digging when the attack comes." "Any idea when they'll sound the charge?" one of the prone men asked. It was clear that he wasn't enjoying the prospect of lying on the damp ground any more than Aulus had. "Within the hour." Marcus shifted slightly. "Get comfortable, we'll have to wait for our moment." The Legion was late as usual. We lay unmoving as the morning light grew, listening to bird calls and the humming of insects. The summer's heat had not entirely fled, and the wet growth around us almost seemed to steam as the sun rose higher. The thin vapours coiled about the darting spears of sunlight and softened the shifting patterns of the branches above as their shadows danced on the forest floor. I could sense the season turning around me, and would have been content to spend the day contemplating that serene spot. I'd begun to doze when the rumble of hooves reached me. Moments later, the guardians of the grove looked up and began to yell out in consternation. They formed a shield wall just as the first riders broke the trees. Behind the riders came the infantry, an overwhelming force that must have turned the defenders' blood to ice. The men around me had no interest in the standoff at the edge of the grove. Their eyes were fixed on the shrine. Sure enough, a group of tribesmen had not joined the rest and were now digging in the grove near the shrine. "This is it." Marcus's sword left its sheath with a whisper. One of the other men began to rise, but Marcus gripped his arm. "Let's see it first." The fevered scraping at the ground revealed a bundle of skins and fabric which one of the men tucked under his arm. As he shifted the package, sunlight flashed off something metallic poking from under the dirty cloth. "Now," Marcus said, and we rose as one. The Germans were so preoccupied with the fighting at the other side of the grove that we were on them before they had time to register that we were there. The man holding the eagle went down in the first rush, and the rest, little more than boys, ran before us. As soon as the defenders at the other side of the grove realized that the eagle was captured, they broke and tried to make for the shelter of the woods. Marcus unwrapped the parcel and raised the golden standard over his head, eliciting a cheer from the legionaries marching into the grove. "Take this and make sure it gets delivered to the right people," Marcus said, handing the eagle to Aulus. Aulus's eyes widened. You don't want to present the eagle yourself? Time enough for that later, Marcus replied. Don't forget that there were 3 eagles taken. These men were given a special duty to guard this one. Who knows where they might lead us? They may lead us nowhere, Aulus argued. Only one way to find out, Marcus replied. He plunged into the woods after the fleeing enemy. I can't tell you why we ran from that victory. I think Marcus didn't like the thought of standing in front of all those men with the eagle in his hands any more than I did. It simply wasn't in his nature, and I could see no reason not to follow him, to go hunting one last time before autumn came. We had not gone very far when we heard the scream. Marcus veered to his right, making for the source of the cries. We came upon 2 cavalrymen standing over the writhing form of a young man. The junior man was unfamiliar to me, but the commander was instantly recognizable. Speak, you little shit-eater! Where did you get this? Drustanus waved a bloody finger, still wearing a heavy ring. The boy bucked under his foot, but Drustanus just pressed harder, eliciting a strangled hissing from the sobbing youth. What goes on here? Marcus said, stepping into the open. Drustanus gaped, then let out a laugh. What providence could bring you here now, Atratinus? It is uncanny. What do you mean? Marcus took a wary step towards the men. I slunk through the thick undergrowth, unsure whether we had encountered friend or foe. You recognize this boy, do you not? Drustanus accused. Marcus cast a glance to the boy. I don't. Why should I? Drustanus looked incredulous. But surely this is a child, the one you say defiled poor Spurius. I must say I had my doubts he existed, but today I find him, and no sooner have I done so than you spring out to defend him. I do not know this boy, Marcus said. How would you know that this is the child I spoke of in any case? Drustanus waved the severed finger. Don't further shame yourself with lies, Atratinus. The little wretch was wearing a ring I gave Spurius. So either this filth took it from his body after you left it to lie like so much meat, or you gave it to the cowardly little pup to suck your cock after the 2 of you murdered him. You know that is not true, Marcus said. I don't know how he came by the ring, but there is no need for this. I will say what I said to Spurius. If you think he has injured you, then put an end to him. There's no need to draw out his suffering. Drustanus giggled and snatched the youth from the ground in a single movement. The young man's face was contorted in pain, but it was familiar enough. 2 years had brought the first tentative hairs to his pale cheeks. Drustanus dragged the whimpering boy's arm out, away from his body, and set his blade against the next digit on his mutilated hand. The boy screamed again, but Drustanus barely seemed to notice his struggles. Why would you care about an enemy of Rome, Marcus? If I had my way, every German would be taught the error of opposing us. What other lesson would you suggest for a little turd like this who dared to lay hands on his betters? It was I who killed Spurius. This boy's crime was profaning the man who raped his mother, Marcus said evenly. He stole his face! I couldn't even send him to his ancestors with that dignity. Drustanus's voice broke. The old hatred for Marcus flashed in his eyes. Leave now, Atratinus, you'll not steal this from me too. Marcus made to turn. Please help me. The boy's Latin was accented, and he stumbled over the words, but it was enough to turn Marcus around. Kill him or let him go, Marcus said. The second rider had been looking more uncomfortable by the minute. What flashed in Marcus's eyes was enough to make him decide that he wanted nothing to do with what was happening. Sir, please. Atratinus is right. There is no juice in this. There are other captives to be had. One finger lost will lower his value as a slave, but if you don't want to take him with us, then you should just kill him and have done, the nervous cavalryman said. The boy went spinning to the forest floor as Drustanus lunged at his second. I don't take orders from you, the larger man cried as he laid his subordinate out on the ground with a single blow. Drustanus towered over the unconscious man, breathing hard. The German boy took the opportunity to get to his feet. He was still cradling his hand, and tears stained his face. Drustanus caught sight of the boy from the corner of his eye. Stay where you are, you little cunt, or I swear you'll die slower than you can imagine. The boy began to run. Drustanus followed, but before he could catch the youth, Marcus stepped in his way. This has gone far enough, he said. The youth made it to the cover of the nearby trees, and Drustanus let out a bellow. He lunged. This time he led with his blade. Marcus only barely managed to dodge the blow, and his own sword seemed to spring into existence as he tore it from its sheath. "Do you want to stand in his place, then? So be it. It was you who took Spurius from me, after all." Sparks flew as their blades met. I made to move forward, but Marcus gave me a signal to hold. "I see you have been driven mad by the loss," Marcus said. He met the larger man's eyes and spoke as he might to a frightened horse. "Think on what you do now. It was not my intent to harm you. I had no idea that the ring might be a sign of affection." Drustanus gave an inarticulate cry of rage at the mention of the ring, and powered forward. Anger lent speed, and Marcus found himself unable to deflect the blow. He parried, but took the full force of the larger man's strike on his sword. Marcus fell backwards, and his sword went spinning. Drustanus's face broke into a death's head grin. "And now? Will you keep talking? Perhaps dance for me a bit. You were always good at that." He raised his sword. "Why don't you dance before I stick this down your throat?" Marcus didn't reply. His eyes flicked to his fallen sword, and he tried to edge round towards it. Drustanus failed to notice the slight jerk of my master's fingers. I launched myself from the bushes, sinking my teeth deep into Drustanus's thigh. A large hand swung out, catching me on my blind side and lifting me high into the air. I landed hard, gasping for breath. The brute started to follow up his attack on me, but Marcus was running for his sword. Drustanus went after him instead. I was shaking my head to clear it when I heard the sound of metal ringing out. Drustanus took a cut on the shoulder and my master spun away. Whatever demon was driving the larger man, he shrugged off the damage and flew after Marcus, hacking as he went. "I'll take your fucking fingers and cut off your dick," Drustanus threatened. Spittle ran from the corners of his mouth, and the big man's face was red as a new officer's cloak. Marcus didn't waste his strength on a response. He ducked under the arc of Drustanus's blade and hooked one of his opponent's ankles with a blurred foot. Drustanus went down, and I tried to dash in. He kicked out and sent me flying again. I landed hard, and the world seemed to tumble around me in a torrent, too fast for me to follow. When I looked up again, Drustanus had managed to get his feet under him and was rising as he parried Marcus's attacks. I forced myself to stand. The chorus from the dark had reached a crescendo and threatened to hammer me back to the earth with every step. I came in quick and quiet, the way that had worked so many times before, but Drustanus saw me coming. At the last possible moment he stepped past Marcus's thrust and began to bring his sword down on me. I watched it all as if I was moving underwater. The metal flashed, quick, like a fish in the tide that held me. Try as I might, I could not fight the momentum that was dragging me towards the falling blade. A shadow covered me and I heard a wet impact. Marcus's weight threw me back and out of danger. It was only as I got my bearings again that I felt the warm blood on my side. The blood was not mine. Marcus lay amidst the churned soil and leaves of the forest floor. Drustanus's sword protruded from his stomach. The big rider looked from me to my fallen master and laughed out loud. "For a dog? A fucking animal? This is what Marcus Atratinus will die for? Perhaps I misjudged your taste when I said you fucked the boy." The breath hissed through Marcus's teeth. He tried to move and his body spasmed. My master bit down, swallowing a scream along with the dark blood that bubbled on his lips. "No curses even now?" Drustanus asked. "You should know that I'll kill the cur anyway. It's only fair after what the two of you did to Spurius." Marcus shifted on the ground and let out a low moan. Drustanus leaned in closer. "Yes?" Marcus's body uncoiled. He cried out at the pain of his stomach muscles working against the steel in his gut. He had fallen with his sword arm under him. Now he threw out his arm, and the weapon he still clutched came out in a glittering arc. Fine Roman steel blurred and passed through Drustanus's knee joint almost without slowing. Marcus slumped on his side. His momentum had turned him so that the hilt of the weapon was wedged against the ground. Drustanus toppled in a fountain of gore. I didn't need my master's signal to know what was expected of me. I lunged in and tore at his throat until my teeth rasped against the bones of his neck. I only came off when Marcus called to me. "Ferox!" His voice was a whisper. I went to him. He touched my face for the last time. I felt his hand tremble as it slid down my flank. Behind us the other rider began to groan. Marcus let his hand fall. "Good boy, Ferox. Good boy. Don't be scared." I whined and leaned close, but I knew better than to put any weight on him. "Soldier!" Marcus tried, then louder. "Soldier!" The man coughed. "Sir," he said reluctantly and crossed over to us. "Take us back to camp, soldier. Tell them to take me to Arya." "Arya, sir? Arya." Frustration broke into his voice. "Find me Aulus or Ceyx at the camp." Marcus paused and a shadow darkened his face. No, not Ceyx. Ceyx is dead." His eyes glazed for a moment. "Find my squad and tell Aulius to take me home." "Sir." The man started towards the horses. "Soldier." "Yes?" "Make sure the dog comes with us. He needs to get home too." Marcus's tone brooked no argument. "So they took me home, thief. Back to the earth that will claim me tonight. Arya took us in, and she wept with me by his bed until the wound claimed him. Sometimes he opened his eyes, but we never knew whether he saw us. It was slow, thief, not like the death I gave you. A quick death was more than you deserve for slinking onto Arya's farm, dagger in hand. There's light in the house now. I think they heard you after all, but they need not fear. I heard you take your last breath seconds ago. Heard it rattle in what's left of your throat. Arya will be here soon, and Geralt will be carrying my master's sword. He doesn't fit it yet, and I pray he never does. He's not much older than you were, thief, and he carries the thing as clumsily as you did your father's dagger. The blade that bit me did belong to Althric, did it not? Will he be happy to see we have sent his last son to join him in hell, I wonder? Perhaps he'll see it as worth it to see himself avenged. You would never have stabbed me if they didn't let me get so fat. They let me get as rusty as that old sword. Old joints don't help. The old aches have gone now. I hardly feel anything. I hear the wings beating in the darkness again. I have no strength to run any more. I hear the footsteps from the house coming closer, but the lamplight is further and further away. They are calling me, but I cannot make out the words for the pounding around me. There are wings that beat in this darkness, thief. Wings that will lift us both. They beat slower and slower as they get close. The thunder fades to a murmur, filling the wide night around me. The flickering lantern is the only star. I hold my breath to hear them better. At last I see them. They are eagles, bright as any we marched behind, proud and cruel as they ever were. Who am I to refuse to follow? I hear my master's voice. We shall go hunting once again.